Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for joining me for my continued coverage of Gears of War Ascendance. I will continue today with the first part of Act 2. This will be chapters 1 through 6 of Act 2, Gears of War Ascendance. Where we left off, Marcus and Kate Diaz had made their way outside of the main city of Ephyra, New Ephyra to be exact. They are making their way now through the ruins of New Ephyra, and they are actually a little bit stealthy because Marcus warns her of something called Pickers. Pickers are the descendants of the Stranded, the people we meet in the first couple of Gears of War games who do not wish to be a part of the COG. These people live just outside COG control, but all they do is pick and scavenge for their livelihood. Once the end of this cliff comes, as they make it to the end of New Ephyra's ruins, where it is what I believe to be the sinkhole of Jacinto, where in the end of Gears 2 we saw Jacinto be sunk by choice. At the end of this cliff there is a plateau. This plateau has been created into a makeshift airstrip. This airstrip is covered in hangars, DBs, and condors, but it is also on a bit of an incline, so keeping and maintaining your footing is a very dangerous thing to try and do while on this incline. They make it to one specific hangar, and Marcus looks at her, they take cover, and she knows now that the plan is to hop on board one of these condors, but must wait for the perfect opportunity. As the condor begins to pull off after accruing a good amount of DBs onto it, it begins to launch. The back ramp begins to close, and Marcus says, now. This is their opportunity to get on the condor. They take off at a full dead sprint after it. Marcus leaps and with almost little to no trouble makes it on, but Kate, due to her tired body, due to the lack of sleep, the nightmares, she is exhausted. She cannot make this jump as easy as Marcus and misses it. She actually has to cling on with her fingertips to try to hold on before being pulled in by Marcus Phoenix, but at first she thought he left her to die, when in reality he reached back for an emergency strap, a bit of a yellow piece of rope that had a latch on the end of it that he used to latch on to Anya Stroud's armor. But I can no longer refer to it as that because earlier in this book Marcus told her it was a gift. That legendary armor that coated Anya Stroud, that kept her safe, is now Kate Diaz's. Once aboard, Marcus and Kate begin to have a bit of a conversation about how angry she is, how frustrated she is, as is Marcus that JD and Dell rejoined the COG, that they took the acceptance of Jin, their new deal to have no charges brought against them, in order to just rejoin to try to stay close to her, when both Marcus and Kate believe it is just Jin controlling where JD and Dell can be. But as they continue to talk about this, they heard a bit of a disturbance outside. They hear an explosion, and when they turn to look out the windows of the condors, they move toward one of the doors. They see smoke billowing up. Kate informs Marcus this is a road that only outsiders use, between Fort Umson, Kate's home village, and South Village. It is a road that connects the two that only outsiders use. Marcus decides they must go and check it out, so he straps on a parachute to himself and gives her one and makes sure that she straps hers on. She says that she'll go after him, and he says no, she will not, and without any hesitation pushes her out of the airplane. The chapter closes with Kate having been pushed from the airplane by Marcus Phoenix to go check out this billowing smoke. We move to Chapter 2 of Act 2, and we meet back up with JD, Dell, Baird, and Sam all sitting inside Jin's office. Jin is fuming. She's very suspicious of the maintenance that happened all night the night before that allowed Kate Diaz to escape. She points some fingers at Baird. Baird brushes it off as it's been on the calendar for months, this routine maintenance that had to be done overnight, and Sam concurs, backing her special man friend up, as they refer to each other, instead of boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever other term you'd like to use. Excuse me. when Baird and Sam end up leaving the office after people point fingers, aren't a bit frustrated, First Minister Jin, goes to JD and Dell and informs them of their new mission, their first mission back with the Coalition. It is to investigate a different burial site, one that was created at a crater far off from New Ephyra. You see, all of a sudden, comms had gone dark to this burial site, but not like anybody lived there. It was just a constant reporting of weather conditions, the seals being okay, things of that nature, maintenance that was being covered by routine computer checks, solar cells that might have gone bad. But it's a bit disturbing nonetheless, seeing as the last burial site was where the swarm came from. They were to gather up a few DBs, get prepared with some weapons, hop on board a Condor, and go to this crater. But they were to go to Baird and figure out if he had anything that could be able to help them on their investigation. What happens when they meet back up with Baird and Sam is they get inside one of those carts that we see in Gears 4 that travels them around the city almost like a taxi cab and takes them to the brand new DB Industries or Damon Baird Industries warehouse. Once inside, Baird kind of walks through, not really giving a tour, but they walk through the entirety of this new warehouse, and they are shown quite possibly every DB that could have ever been imagined, from the Shepards to the DR1s to the massive DB that you pilot at the end of Gears 4. But that's not what Baird wants to give them. You see, they think it might be a nasty new gun, a new militaristic style of DB, but what ends up being the new technology that he gives JD and Dell, it's the next generation of jackbots, the floating little best friend of every gear in Gears 1 through 3 and in Judgment that they use to signal the beacon for the missile. But it's the newest jackbot. They call it DaveBot. DaveBot will join them on their journey now. He's the newest technology from DB Industries because Baird has always had a soft spot for these cloaking little floating robotic buddies. They can hack into any cog in intelligence or technology. They can cloak and stay out of danger. They can give you scans. They can take readouts on the land. They're a soldier's best friend in the battlefield, basically, that's not another soldier. But this chapter comes to a close after Baird shows off his brand new jackbot, and we return to the parachuting Marcus and Kate. We've gone back and forth now, Chapter 1 with Marcus and Kate, Chapter 2 with JD and Dell, now Chapter 3 back with Marcus and Kate. We join them as they come down for a safe landing in a small clearing below where the Condor was flying. They both land safely, and Kate has some trouble getting the parachute off. It's understandable. She's never had to deal with this, but Marcus, being the veteran, grizzled soldier that he has always been, as he lands in a nice little jog, and he cuts away the parachute before it has any chance to hit the ground or any trees surrounding him. It looks like he's done it for the billionth time. Once landed, she pulls her N-bar, and Marcus, with his Lancer, they creep toward the road where they saw the smoke billowing out of, and when they get there, Kate goes into a panic because she smells burning flesh. She's scared it may be the kids. She's afraid that it may be other outsiders. But as she gets close enough to investigate, she finds out it is a swarm drone. His arms, his legs, cooking still in the exploded cart debris. But as soon as she looks up from the wreckage, she sees a little bit of movement in the forest. She's not sure what it could be, but she continues to sight in with her M-bar, trying to figure out what it is, and then it turns to look at her, and to her horror, it is a Scion. A Scion looking back at her, standing head and shoulders above what both Marcus and her could fathom, smiling now with its black lips pulled back, its menacing, monstrous face and height. And as she figures out that it's a Scion, a Pouncer out of nowhere springs to life. It's a trap. A Scion and a Pouncer were waiting for somebody to come investigate, and it takes all she could muster to escape the first 2 or 3 jumps of this new Pouncer before she sends it back with a massive kick, flying toward a tree where above it a second Pouncer is already waiting in the wings. It's recoiling its tail. It's ready to fire at her. She readies to shoot her M-bar, but she sees that Marcus Phoenix, the grizzled soldier, has come up behind them and attacks the secondary Pouncer, getting ready to unleash its talons. with the chainsaw bayonet on the end of his customized Lancer. As he rips through it, he throws it off with his momentum forward into the first Pouncer, causing the good distraction and causing those nails that come flying off of the original Pouncer to miss Miss Diaz just by inches. As she takes a deep breath, though, because she thinks she might have a moment to take that deep breath, she quickly realizes that the Scion has come up to her, has clenched his fist, and is getting ready to deliver a blow unlike any she's ever seen before. She rolls back. She throws herself back away from the Scion. She pulls back the M-bar, pulls the trigger on it, revs it up, lets go the electromagnetic pulse that would shoot out of it, and makes clean contact with the Scion in front of her. It begins to bleed from the stomach, but it is not stopping. This Scion is on a mission. She pulls the trigger again, and it hits it right in the throat, ladies and gentlemen. It begins to bleed from the throat, but Scions, they will not go down without a fight. They are monstrous, to say the least. It's still smiling. It's curled back its lips, letting her know that it is coming to kill her. It is going to end her battle right here and now, but with the third and final shot. Kate Diaz pulls that M-bar back, readies it, and lets loose one right through the teeth of that Scion, right through the teeth and out through the back of the brainstem, because that bad boy was a headshot, ladies and gentlemen. She takes that Scion out with a third shot, putting it to the ground. And so what they have now is a trap that was laid by who knows, killing some swarm, but not all, and allowing the swarm to set their own trap. Kate is worried. She looks to Marcus and says, "We must go to South Village now." South Village is up a mountain pass below them. They must follow this road that has cart tracks all over it because it's used as a trading route by outsiders. And they start off, even though Marcus suffered a deep cut on his arm due to one of the Pouncers attacking him secondly. He's now cut on his arm, he's injured, but he's unfazed. He looks at Kate, he nods, he knows what he must do, which is follow her to South Village. At the end of this chapter, we actually jump back in chapter 4 to JD and Dell, who are now flying aboard their own Condor on their brand new mission toward that mountainous crater. They're having a conversation back and forth about if they did the right thing, if Kate is upset. The pilot, though, who is known as Yoon, who we are introduced to, that's what she tells them to call her, is Yoon, Y-O-O-N. She calls them over to tell them that they are approaching the crater. She'd like to know the plan of action because other than the DBs, they are in control. They are the ones that are making the calls, and the shots should be known to her as the pilot, whether she should stay, she should bug out, whatever she must do, but she wants to know the plan of action. As they come up to the edge of the crater and they fly over it, coming to where they would have to land, they lose all contact with control back home. No transmissions can go past this crater toward New Ephyra for First Minister Jin, for anybody within the Coalition of Ordered Government's military, but their comms to one another, being able to speak to one another in close vicinity, radio signals, those are fine, but it's the long-distance comms going back to New Ephyra that are affected. Yoon begins to prepare for a landing on a makeshift strip down below them at the base of the crater that's about a mile long, but it becomes quite evident that she's going to have to manually land this plane, that there's no real runway and no technology that would help her be able to autopilot the Condor to a safe landing. It's quite the bumpy ride, but as they begin to descend, Dell is called over by JD to look at one more thing off of his map and his radar. He shows him that all the names of the surrounding areas have been scrubbed. They have no name for this crater. They don't know exactly where they are, and they cannot reach control. They're on their own out here. They are all alone to fight off whatever may or may not be in this crater. They decide that they have to get ready. They move to the back of the Condor, and at Jin's request and orders, they are not equipped with lancers, boom shots, drop shots, not equipped with a Nasher, not equipped with anything that you think they might need, even a long shot. They are given just enforcers, much like the enforcers that all the DB patrols have themselves. And they get ready, JD turns on the DBs, has them readied to exit the plane, tells them their orders, and they land. As the back ramp opens up, the DBs begin to fan out in a 50-meter radius half semicircle around them to patrol like the Securitrons they basically are. Dell remembers that Baird gave them a brand new Dave bot, and he goes back onto the plane to make sure that they take the little guy with him. They start him up, they unload him out of the box, and Dell informs him that his first mission is to patrol, scan, and map the area so they know where all the buildings are, where they possibly may need to go. A few beeps later, it will fly up and begin scanning the surrounding terrain. JD and Dell make their way over to some wires in a control tower to find out if anything has gone wrong, and if any wires have been chewed, any batteries have gone bad, but they continue to look. They check the wires, they're good. The cables, they're good. The batteries, solar-powered, still good. The control panels, though, where they relay information home, are scrambled. Not like somebody's tinkered with it or has interference technology. Simply, they've interfered with the control panel itself, and it's sending back mumbled up garbage. Dell picks up on this first. He shows JD, and in his infinite wisdom, JD does the classic, let's turn it off and turn it back on again approach. He pulls the lever from the on position to the off, turns it back on. A few moments later, a red light turns green, and green must be good, but not good enough, because suddenly an earthquake erupts. They don't know what it is, but it sounds like something is banging at their feet. It is causing tremors unbelievably loud around them. JD looks at Dell, and Dell makes the joke to turn it back off again, because if that's what's causing it, they certainly need to go ahead and get it to be turned off once more. But that's not it. A second thud against the seal of the burial site, and finally a third, which sends the burial site cap exploding from its original position. It is now flying debris in every single possible angle, and one of the massive pieces of metal that come flying off actually contact through the original cockpit of the Condor where Yoon was sitting. And as they look, they find that she is now dead. She is slumped over in her pilot's seat as a piece of debris has cut straight through the cockpit itself. With all the explosion, the smoke, the shrapnel, everything that is flying about, the sight lines are not so good. And in the distance, they hear the DBs begin their normal process of telling somebody that they are trespassing, that they are not warranted there, before hearing robots being ripped to shreds by something. The last thing they hear is the hiss of something say maintenance, as a DB is thrown through the air at tremendous speeds and lands against the wall behind JD and Dell at the control tower. Dell calls for DaveBot, tells them to find the foreman's container, because the foreman's container is pretty secure. It has a lock on it. They can close the shutters. And DaveBot begins flying off in the distance. They have to do everything in their power to just keep up with DaveBot. They almost lose him several times. But finally, they reach the foreman's container, in which DaveBot must unlock the lock for them, and what seems to be an eternity passes. It's merely only a few seconds before the doors unlock. JD and Dell run in, close behind them the door, and lock it up with DaveBot inside the container with them. They close the shutters, but the problem they've run into is now they can hear the swarm prowling around the outside of the container, hunting JD and Dell. DBs don't hunt. There are no friends out there. All they have to protect themselves are enforcers. This is where Chapter 4 comes to a close, with a bleak situation for JD and Dell, and we find ourselves in Chapter 5, back with Marcus and Kate. Marcus and Kate are now making their way up the mountain pass, crossing two more of these cart traps that somebody has set. Swarm bodies of drones strewn about in pieces. They continue their way up the pass, but this is long after summer has gone, so it's not a nice sturdy ground that they can walk on with just some cart tracks to contend with. Oh no. It's getting colder. It's getting damp. The snow has fallen. The footing is unsure on every step. They reach the precipice, and Kate goes into a belly crawl, gets close enough to the gate to realize that it's been blasted off. The South Village has been blasted wide open by someone or something. And now she aims down sights, calls for the all clear. Marcus runs to the left side of the gate, taking a position against it like cover, and begins to peer inside. When he realizes that everything is okay, he calls Kate up. She takes cover on the right side of this massive gate, and Marcus informs her of the way the cog would do it, how they'd leapfrog from cover to cover and make sure that they clear everything out before anything could go wrong. But Kate says, "No, I'll go right, you go left, we'll meet up at the other end of the cliff, and it'll be quicker that way." Marcus grunts, but accepts. These aren't his people. This isn't a village he knows. This time, they will do it her way. But he does jokingly say if stuff goes wrong, he will damn well tell her, "I told you so." They move out, and when they get to the other end of the cliff, they actually find that it has been empty. The entire of South Village is a ghost town. They come together on the other side of the cliff basin, where a cave is. This cave has been carved out to create a great hall of sorts. Now, they've explored most of this village. They've seen that most of it is empty. This cave, on the other hand, is still dark. It's still damp. They're unsure what lies at the other end. They come to the doors of the Great Hall, and they're still closed. But Marcus gives a swift tug on them, and they open quite easily, which worries Kate even more. She's not seen any humans and no signs of defensive bombardments. As the door flies open, Kate and Marcus, they line up down their sights, going inside the Great Hall. And before Marcus can step in, Kate stops him. She sees a fishing wire below them, tied between two giant pillars. Above them, detonating charges, and above that, two old bean tins filled with screws and nails and anything that could be used as makeshift shrapnel. Another trap, but unsprung. Kate stops Marcus from going through the trap itself, and when she turns around, they go back out because nobody is inside that great hall. Nothing but alive, but a little cat. Half-eaten bowls, half-drank drinks are still on the table of the great hall, but no soul to be found. As they exit the cave, they hear a whizzing sound, a nice whir, a whistle, a high-pitched whistle, and before they know it, Marcus screams, "Down!" Pushing Kate out of the way, they spread left and right, and before they can hit the ground, a drop shot lands, digs into the ground, and explodes. That drop shot exploding, ladies and gentlemen, is the beginning of Chapter 6, Act 2. We stick with Marcus and Kate because this is a dire situation. You see, that first drop shot was the least of their concerns because as they look up, it is another Scion with two Pouncers with him. Again, they continue to have to fight Pouncers and Scions, but this one isn't coming for hand-to-hand combat. This one has brought himself a drop shot with him, and they see the first Pouncer leap toward Marcus Phoenix. Marcus moves to the side, and before it can readjust in midair, it lands on some planks that are holding up the winch that would lead to a basket down below the bottom of the river, down below the bottom of the mountain to where the river is. As it lands on this wooden plank that is holding up the winch cracks. It snaps below the weight of this Pouncer and the momentum of its jump, and it snaps as the Pouncer, before he can readjust, falls to the bottom of this giant mountainous base and presumably dies. But before it dies, it throws out some of those mean tail quills. One of them stabs Marcus Phoenix right through the leg, blood spewing everywhere as he pulls it out. It is what can only be described as a grievous injury. But Kate has no time for weary or rest because a Pouncer has leapt at her now. She now must figure out what she's going to do. She has the M bar. She goes to pull it, but she realizes that it's backwards. She's not holding it down the sights. She's got the butt of the gun out front. She turns. She smacks the pouncer with all of her might. And when she hits it, it throws the jaw of the pouncer out of socket. You can now see the tendrils and fangs hanging as it goes to levy against her. She pulls the drop shot, or she pulls that M bar. She flips it. She begins to aim down sights. And from this range, it is as deadly as anything on this planet. She gets off what can only be described as a lucky shot. That shot from that M-bar rips through the mouth of that pouncer, killing it instantaneously. But there is still no rest, because she turns. The Scion, letting loose that battle cry we've all heard in Gears 4, summons 2 swarm drones to its side, both now berserker rage initiated. They have that weird glowing mist on them. The Scion has yelled. He has given him the extra strength and the bravery to fear nothing. They begin charging at Kate Diaz. She must pull that M-bar back up, aim down the sights. She aims for the one closer to her, but instead of going for a headshot, she shoots it in the leg. As it hits the leg, it rips the right leg off of this swarm, and it falls tumbling into the path of the second drone, which sends it off of its main course. This allows Kate to run away. She begins retreating into that cave where that great hall is. She has to leave Marcus outside, but she can still hear Marcus throwing rounds out, the thunderclap of the Lancer springing and singing to life. She is assured he is still alive, but she is being chased. She gets all the way to that great hall. She leaps over that first trap and then leaps again onto her back, hiding underneath that great dining table in the hall, which is covered by those half-eaten soups, those drinks, and all the sorts. As she sees the Scion enter into the room, it's waiting for a second. It's trying to gather its night vision or cave vision or get acclimated to the dark of this room. As it goes to take a step, though, the Scion is smarter than we think. The Scion actually sees the trap. It stops itself. It doesn't spring it. It's not going to step on it. It's not that dumb. But you know what is dumb? A berserker raged swarm drone. That thing goes careening past the Scion. It levies the trap. She hears the explosions. She sees the shrapnel. It flies everywhere. She closes her eyes, but the blinding white light still lights up the inside of her eyelids white. As she comes back to, she sees the swarm drone skewn like a stuck pig with nails and screws and everything of the sort that was used as shrapnel, but she doesn't see the Scion. She's not sure what has happened to the Scion, but she knows she must return to Marcus Phoenix to try to help him. So she gets up to begin running out. Both pillars and possibly the cave would collapse above her if she waited any longer, because that explosion was quite hefty. As she reemerges from the cave, she sees that Marcus Phoenix has fought off 2 more pouncers single-handedly. But that's not his best accomplishment. With a leg that has a pierced hole in it and an arm that has been cut by a previous pouncer fight, he fought off a snatcher single-handedly. The thing that had eaten him in Gears 4 and tried to take him to the location that the swarm's hive was. A snatcher which Kate remembers JD, Dell, and herself having so much trouble with just the 3 of them. Marcus Phoenix killed one by ripping its guts open with that Lancer bayonet from stem to stern. Ladies and gentlemen, she could not believe it. She sees Marcus as using a spray can of some kind of field medicine developed by the Coalition of Ordered Governments to close up wounds. And they decide, now that they're at the top of this mountain, the only logical place to go, now that they've seen it's empty, is not back down the treacherous path they once came, but down the fishing, the fishing baskets that were used to haul fish up from the river basin and to take them back down. They were big enough to fit 2 or 3 people, or however many pounds of fish were needed, but one of them was destroyed, so Kate and Marcus must take the same one on the way down. As they get into it and they pull the lever to allow themselves to begin descending toward the river, suddenly a Scion, the same Scion ripped to shreds by the shrapnel, bleeding now, has landed in this basket with both of them. smiling at Kate. It gives her one massive backhand, slinging her against the wall of this basket. She's got to have a concussion. Her eyes, she feels like there's cobwebs. The lights are on, but nobody's really home. And when she comes to a little bit, she sees that Marcus Phoenix has squared up with a scion. A man who is almost doubled in size and weight by this scion has squared up toe-to-toe like he was about to go 15 rounds with a mutant alligator. Marcus Phoenix was going to try to box this scion because he didn't have his Lancer anymore. He was unarmed except for his fists. The scion reared back after knocking one of Marcus's blows away. It reared back. It was going to let this mother have it with all he had. And just before the scion could levy his blow, Kate rushes him, lowering her shoulder like a football tackle. Even Coltrane from Thrashball would be impressed. She hits him right in the hip, sending that scion off balance, and she's careening with it outside of the basket, but before she falls out, something grabs a hold of her leg. Marcus has saved her again. She saved him from a fate of that blow, and he has saved her from falling for a second time in just a few short hours, once from the Condor and once from this basket. They think they are safe, but this moment is interrupted by the screeches of juvies. The juvies are up top, gnawing at the ropes, trying to get them loose so that the basket itself would fall to the basin of this river and explode basically with the impact. They have to come up with a plan quick, and Marcus says, grab the ropes. Try to find something you can latch onto on the side of this mountain. They both grab onto the cables as tough as they can and begin swinging back and forth. As Kate is swinging, though, she gets close to this cave entrance. She's not sure if it's somewhere she can actually land, but a hand reaches out for her. Something smaller than a scion or a swarm drone, something with a leather glove, humanoid, human even. And she's not sure what it is, but she misses the first grab, and as Marcus swings himself in, he does not miss. He grabs onto this forearm, swings himself over, and now they gather up Kate, and as Kate comes face to face with their savior, the man that we thought died to a snatcher in Gears 4, unless you paid attention to the post-credits scene, ladies and gentlemen, Oscar has returned from seemingly the dead in Kate's eyes because she could have only assumed he was gone, is now back and has saved his niece from a certain perilous death, as well as saving Marcus Phoenix. And that surprise, that shock of Oscar being alive to Kate is how we draw this video to a close, and that will end Chapter 6 of Act 2, Gears of War Ascendance. I hope you join me again tomorrow, where I cover the other half of Act 2. It'll be chapters 7 through 12. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.